Many see progress and environmental protection as competing priorities, where one must always be chosen over the other. At ELOS, we see things differently. We see a partnership, a balance between improving the quality of our lives and preserving the places we call home. Our services make it possible for projects to move forward while also ensuring that they comply with all laws and regulations, that sensitive wetlands are not damaged or destroyed, that endangered species and habitats are protected, and that invaluable cultural resources are preserved for future generations. This is where we live, where we play, where we raise our families. We strive for a brighter future, but remain committed to the lands we love. ELOS, where natural environments and human interests intersect.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Bud Faust. I'm the marketing coordinator at ELOS Environmental. Just a couple housekeeping things real quick. First thing is that the webinar is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel. You'll receive an email when the recording is available. If you want to rewatch or share with any colleagues, please feel free to. The second thing is we will be taking questions, but not until the end of the presentation. So if you do have questions, you can enter them in the chat box and we will address them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'm going to turn you over to our presenter, Ms. Danielle Trish. And thank you again for joining us. We hope you enjoy the presentation.
Good afternoon and welcome. As he said, I'm Danielle Trish. I do business development and project management for ELOS Environmental. And today's topic is environmental due diligence in the commercial real estate environment. So we are ELOS, an Inventia company. We like to think of ourselves where natural environments intersect with the human interest. A little bit about myself. I am a native of Louisiana. And I have two boys. At this time, I have been a realtor for the state of Louisiana for 18 years, and I specialize in repossessions, relocations, HUD certification transactions, light commercial real estate, as well as investment property. And my time at ELOS is now approximately 3 years. So between my real estate expertise, as well as my experience in the environmental industry, it gives me a great sense of knowledge and resources to share with you in regards to regulation and sustainable practices. I apologize, I did skip a slide, and that was the history of ELOS. I'm going to go back just a smidge and tell you a little bit about our company. We were founded in 2006, and ELOS Environmental LLC originated here in Louisiana. Our main office is in Hammond, and we have a secondary office, which is in Thibodaux. We're a professional consulting company offering a diverse range of services. And to give you a little background, not only do we offer environmental services, but we offer professional consulting services. And our diverse range has come from the fact that our clients have had needs that have required us to think outside of the box. So we've become one of the premier professional consulting firms in the state of Louisiana. And thankfully, with our familiarity with federal, state, and local agencies and their processes, we've become experts to save you time and money. It streamlines our services and it assists our customers and clients in ways that continuously grows our service lines. The importance of environmental due diligence. For starters, lenders may require an environmental assessment prior to a sale. But consider if you were a personal financed person or developer and you didn't need the assistance of a lender. You might find yourself in some pitfalls. And what I mean by that is without the leading requirements of having these assessments in order for you to justify your loan, you might be struggling. You might put yourself in vulnerability sense. So what we're suggesting is seek the help of professionals. What this will do is it's going to protect you from liabilities associated with a contaminated site. For example, you could suffer from personal injuries, damage to adjacent properties, remediation costs, and fines, and it could decrease the value of your property in the future in the event that you find that it's contaminated. The importance of environmental due diligence. We say use a professional, whether it's a realtor, a scientist, a surveyor. There's experts in these fields for a reason. The environmental site assessment, it's a phase, the opportunities are a phase one, and the phase one determines whether or not there are contaminants in the property. Phase two is going to go ahead and identify and qualify quantitatively, what the level of contamination is. And phase three is going to determine the likeliness of the combination and how to remediate this property. So I want to give you some examples of recognizable environmental conditions. Let's think about things that you would see in your regular community. For example, an underground storage tank. Think of gas stations, a dry cleaner, a junkyard. In a junkyard, you're likely to find, oils, brake fluids, any other type of chemicals that are used to work on a vehicle, as well as an automotive salvage yard. We think about maybe a golf course, a landfill, or anything that's industrial or chemical use on a site. Some opportunities to think about how the contaminations can happen. It could be through the groundwater, through the soil, and if there's any opportunities for it to spill over into the neighboring properties, this could be a liability. Think about the presence of what everyone is concerned about, PFAS. They say it lasts forever. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that we are educating ourselves and we're taking the precautions to safeguard ourselves from liabilities as well. In the event that you suspect the presence of mold, asbestos, or lead, that's also a service that we offer. We provide testing. The Brownsfield program is a unique opportunity, and it's set up by the EPA. And what they do is they grant technical assistance that's going to help assess and educate you to safely and clean up the sustainable reuse of the property. It helps address legacy contaminations and abandoned sites more expedited. So for example, in the event that you were in a wonderful position to have a legacy property, something that's been in your family for years, passed along to you. Let's say it's a gas station and you inherit it. Well, this property hasn't been functional for your entire lifetime. And here it is, you are now the new owner. The problem is that the liability with contamination is going to fall on the owner. So is this property really an asset or is it a liability? If it's been blighted since your entire lifespan, I'm going to assume it probably has some contaminants. And at this point, it's probably a liability. The Brownsfield program is a wonderful way that it can be reimbursed. You can reintroduce this property into e-commerce. What I mean by that is this process will help you limit your liability. It's going to help the community risk their issues with possible contamination. It hopefully will be revitalized and reintroduced to the tax rolls and e-commerce, producing jobs and making this now a resource and an asset to the community opposed to it in the past. So the Brownsfield program is designed to reduce the blight, and it offers developers the opportunity for incentives to move forward and not have as much liability. LDEQ voluntary remediation program, it's voluntary and it's going to aid in the redevelopment of the property and the environmental issues, providing applicants the ability to receive a certificate of completion. And this certificate of completion is great because it releases you from the liability of future owners and the past contamination. Some other items that we offer are wetland delineation and a jurisdictional determination. There's often a lot of concern as to what truly is wetlands and what is subject to regulation. The waters of the United States recently have determined an updated version of what truly is wetlands. Think about it. In the event that it's wetlands, you may have limited accessibility to navigate to and from it. We want to make sure that your values are appropriate based on how you'll be able to use this property in the future. Mitigation banks. Just so you know, ELOS currently owns 5 mitigation banks, manages. And the purpose of a mitigation bank is to offset the ecological loss of development when a project is happening. And the idea is that you're going to restore a different area opposed to the affected area so that hopefully there's no net loss to the environment. So when a project threatens the ecological system, credits can be purchased from a mitigation bank by the property owner. So to give you an example, you can't do a tree farm, for example, that could have been blighted or destroyed and exchange it for the same parcel of land as flat land. And the reason being is the vegetation is not equal. So the mitigation bank would have to determine the equality of credits associated with the damage that was caused. Another offering is cultural resources, and cultural resources is to assess the effect of a project on the culture or the historic resource. Cultural resources usually comes into play when there's federal or state money that comes in as a financial backer. So you'll see these transactions when there's the insuring of a loan or land transfer or conveyance. Our job is to find these artifacts and to make sure that we restore them and return them safely to whomever was the previous culture or peoples who inhabited the land. So some examples in Louisiana, we often come across unmarked grave sites, which is pretty typical. In that event, through cultural resources, we will look to find ways to possibly re-navigate or to preserve and protect what we find. We also run across this opportunity because we have several banks of water. So, whenever there's water surfaces and things wash up on the shore, there's vulnerability. And we also have several indigenous areas. So please keep that in mind for the future. We regularly work with the National Historic Preservation Act. And just so you kind of are aware, what we do is we assess the effects of the project on historic resources, and we resolve any adverse by developing alternatives like I had shared before. Some other factors to consider, we often refer to as called sick building syndrome. So there's building codes that currently regulate the energy efficiency and the restrictions of ventilation. What this happens, it can build up carbon monoxide, which can create, strain on your respiratory systems. In addition to that, there can be biological contaminants such as mold, asbestos, or other bacteria or fungus. The air monitoring testing can help and prevent the illness and identify the sources. So for example, if we had, let's say, moisture that was from a fire and an alarm set off and then the sprinklers went off, we could identify if it was moisture mapping that was needed depending on the saturation level and what needs to be repaired. We also experienced cases like this when we had rising water, say Ida or Katrina or other natural disasters, or possibly a roof failure. One of our case studies, as I mentioned before, was an old golf course. The history behind this case study is that the developer intended to purchase this piece of land as a golf course, and he was going to make it a retirement community. Well, after decades of maintenance, the property had become contaminated. So with the herbicides, pesticides, and insecticides, it was not going to be inhabitable for the elderly. The runoff had contaminated the ponds and the sand features. The site required remediation before the property could be sold. And here it is, the takeaway. The past use of the property greatly matters in the terms of potential contaminations. On the surface, this buyer thought he was going to get a wonderful open piece of land with a great view. And in turn, There are several senses of liability based on the level of contamination that have to be resolved before he can move forward. Some tips for buyers and sellers. Don't let someone else's problem become your problem. Bringing in experts early is important. Bring in experts who are independent from the buyer or seller. And the past use of the property matters. Do your research. Mitigate these issues before listing the property. Include an attorney when regulatory issues are present. Address environmental issues at the sale agreement. And conduct a phase 1 within 6 months of the anticipated settlement date. They're only good for 180 days, but can be adjusted or reused up to a year. Thank you very much, and I ask that you stay tuned in the future. We plan to have webinars regularly to educate you. I'd love to hear your feedback. In addition to that, you're welcome to email, text me, or give me a call. I love to learn, and I'd also love to know your feedback on topics that you'd like to learn about. Thanks.
If anyone has any questions, please type them in the chat box and we can get those answered for you. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions currently. I'll take this opportunity to let you know again that the webinar is being recorded and we will be posting it to our YouTube channel. You will be receiving an email when it is available, and please feel free to share with colleagues or if you just want to rewatch it yourself to double check some information. If there's anything we can do for you, any further questions, you can send us a message through our website at elosenv.com. Not seeing any questions in the chat box, so I'm assuming the presentation was so thorough that we answered all your questions beforehand. Thank you to Danielle for taking her time today. Thank you for joining us. And as Danielle mentioned, this is a monthly series, so please follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and you'll be notified of the next webinar and future webinars that are upcoming. And as Danielle also mentioned, please, if you have any ideas or topics that you'd like to see covered, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to see if that's something we can put together. And with that, I will bid you a good rest of your day. Thank you again for coming, and have a great afternoon.